I can't pinpoint the exact moment my marriage began collapsing. There was no dramatic eruption, no dramatic breakup scene, no shouting match that shook the walls. It wasn't like that at all. What happened to us was much quieter, almost invisible. It was like a slow leak under the floorboards, something draining away steadily while we kept stepping over it, pretending nothing was wrong. My name is Emily. Troy and I have been married for 11 years. We first crossed paths in this tiny old tea house when I was 22 and he was 24, two clueless young adults acting like we knew what we were doing, masking our fear of the future by pretending to be brave. Somehow, through that innocence and chaos, we built a whole life together. A home, a business, 2 children, traditions only we understood, vacations, little rituals, private jokes that only make sense to 2 people hopelessly intertwined. On the outside, it looked like I had everything a woman could want. And honestly, some days I believed that too. Yet there I was, sitting on a stiff wooden bar stool in a nearly empty tumbleweed tavern at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, rehearsing words that were about to shatter my own life. I watched the condensation sliding down my glass, rolling slowly like a tear before soaking into the napkin, disappearing without a trace. And I wondered, would Troy's tears, if he shed any, disappear just as easily? And more frighteningly, would mine? Adrian sat next to me, my lover. Even now, saying that word makes my stomach twist. There's nothing romantic about it, only guilt, heaviness, and the kind of shame you try to swallow but it sticks in your throat. Adrian was calm in that infuriating way people are when they haven't yet realized the fallout they're about to trigger. Meanwhile, my insides felt like a spinning washing machine on the highest setting. Troy didn't know the real reason I asked him to meet me. I told him we needed to talk privately about us. I left out a few essential details. That Adrian would be there. That Adrian pushed me to just be honest. And that I hadn't slept for 2 straight nights because I knew the moment Troy walked in, everything would change forever. The door creaked open behind me and instantly my whole body went cold. I didn't even need to look. You develop a certain sense for the person you've shared your life with, like your soul recognizes their presence before your eyes do. He approached, and before he even reached us, I could feel something simmering in him. Not anger. Not yet. Just pain that hadn't found its words. "Hello, Troy," I said quietly. It felt wrong leaving my mouth. No pet name. No warmth. Not even a simple touch. "Troy." He echoed my tone. "Hey, what's going on?" His eyes flicked to Adrian, confused, rightfully so. That should have been my cue to speak. But of course, Adrian stepped in first, shaking Troy's hand like he was introducing himself at some networking event instead of detonating the truth of an affair. Then, without hesitation, Adrian told my husband that we'd been sleeping together for months. I watched Troy's face closely. I expected an explosion, a punch, a scream, something. But there was none of that. What came instead was far worse. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like a vacuum sucking the air out of the room. A silence that hurts more than yelling ever could. I tried to speak because I don't know, guilt? Panic? Stupidity? Something inside me needed to defend myself. "Troy, I never wanted to hurt you. I'm not leaving you. Just, Adrian is something special and I can't ignore that anymore." It sounded pathetic the moment it left my lips. In my head it sounded logical, even gentle. Out loud it sounded cruel. Troy didn't say a single word in response. He ordered a beer, sat at the far end of the bar, drank it quietly, and walked out. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Adrian. He just left. And right there, right in that breath between the door closing and silence sinking in, I felt something terrifying. He wasn't surprised. He already knew. And he had been preparing. People misunderstand Troy. His silence is never empty. His silence is strategy. Adrian squeezed my hand and murmured something about how everything would work out, as if he had any clue who Troy really was. He didn't. Not even a little. Later that evening when I got home, Troy was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. He hugged the kids, took them out for ice cream, acted normal. For a moment, I foolishly thought maybe the worst was over. Maybe he had processed it. Maybe he didn't care as much as I feared. But then he came home without the kids, and dread punched me in the chest. That night he barely spoke to me. Then he went out again. Didn't return until almost sunrise. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd slept with someone else. And then, humiliatingly, jealousy hit me. The same jealousy I never expected to feel because I was the one who broke him. The irony disgusted me. Adrian didn't call that night. Not once. I stared at my phone like an idiot, waiting for a message that never came. And somewhere in that awful silence, doubt started spreading inside me like a crack in glass. The next morning I cooked breakfast, bacon, eggs, the usual, pretending everything was normal. Troy walked in smiling politely, complimenting the food like he was chatting with a stranger. Not a husband. Not a man whose life I'd just gutted. "I'll be here all day," I said, hoping he'd find comfort in that. He reacted as if I'd just informed him the weather would be mild. Later, he left to get the car serviced. I called Adrian. I don't know why. Reassurance, maybe. Or cowardice. When I mentioned that Troy seemed calm, Adrian said it was a good sign. It wasn't. It never was. Troy's calmness didn't mean acceptance. It meant planning. It meant decisions were being made in the quiet corners of his mind. It meant consequences. That night, something chilling happened. Troy didn't ask about the kids. Not once. Not their dinner, their homework, their bedtime, their safety. He just accepted their absence. And that scared me more than any screaming match ever could have. By Thursday morning, things had shifted again. We sat across from each other eating breakfast like two strangers seated at the same table by accident. He didn't ask about Adrian. Didn't ask why. Didn't accuse me of anything. He simply watched, observing, calculating. At one point he set down his napkin, looked me directly in the eye and said, "I have errands today. I'll be home later." No warmth. No tension. Just business. I told myself to relax, that maybe this was clarity or reconciliation or at least acceptance. I was lying to myself. That afternoon, when the house fell quiet, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at the coffee mug Troy had left behind. I lifted it and pressed my thumb against the faint imprint of his lips on the rim, and my hands started shaking. The reality of what I had gambled, my marriage, my stability, my family, finally crushed me. And by then, it was already too late. I had already made my choices long before the consequences arrived. And when Troy finally came home around dinner time, the way he acted sent a cold ripple through me. He wasn't irritated. He wasn't distant. He was pleasant. And somehow, that terrified me more than any shouting ever could. The kids were still at my sister-in-law's place, apparently staying the whole weekend. When I asked why, he just shrugged and said, "I figured they'd enjoy some time with Sue." Just like that. Casual. Unbothered. As if this was all completely normal. But something in me tightened. Sue always called me about the kids. Every time. Not hearing from her felt wrong, like a small alarm bell muffled under a pillow. I convinced myself I was imagining it, guilt twisting shadows into monsters. Troy sat across from me on the couch that night, sipping tea and watching TV. So calm. Too calm. After a while, he quietly rose and went upstairs without even glancing back. I stayed in the silent living room for what felt like hours. Somewhere between staring at the wall and convincing myself everything was fine, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt truly connected to him. The man I once believed would be my forever. My fingers moved automatically, opening Adrian's messages. His last text glared at me, "He'll get over it." But would he? Should he? Did I even want him to? I didn't reply. I deleted the message instead. I was tired of staring at mistakes dressed up as comfort. Friday felt off. Not in a dramatic way, but in the way a room feels wrong after someone moves the furniture. Troy looked different, lighter, sharper, almost energized. He wore one of his nicer shirts, freshly shaved, and he even smiled. That smile chilled me. People don't glow like that when they're healing. They glow when they're preparing. In the early afternoon, he left again, briefcase in hand. He never took his briefcase on weekends. He came back late that night with a faint smell of bar drinks clinging to him. I couldn't place what he'd been drinking. He didn't look drunk, just loosened, collected. He slid into bed beside me without a word. The mattress barely sank. I reached for his hand. He pulled away. Not angrily, just decisively. A rejection so quiet it echoed. I don't remember when sleep finally came. Only that by morning I felt like something irreversible had shifted beneath my feet. Saturday moved like a dream I couldn't wake from. Troy made breakfast again, silent except for the sound of him scrolling through his phone. I drifted around the kitchen pretending to tidy things that were already tidy, desperate to fill the emptiness. When I asked if he wanted to do something together, he said, "I have plans later." Plans? Plans he wouldn't share? At one point he opened the sliding door and stepped outside without saying a word. He stayed out there so long I started imagining headlines, disasters, confessions, every worst-case scenario my mind could invent. When he finally walked back in, he just said, "Going out for a bit." I nodded, small and spineless, like someone bracing for a punishment they know is deserved. Adrian texted twice that day. I didn't answer. It's strange how quickly love can become noise, and fear becomes thunder. Sunday noon came and Troy was gone again. No explanation. No update. And he hadn't called the kids, not once. He always checked on them, especially Sundays. He came home late that night and his energy was different. Dense, settled, unwavering. He didn't avoid my eyes anymore. He looked ready. And inside me something cracked open. I wanted to ask where he'd been, what he'd been doing, why he looked like a man who had shaken hands with fate. But the words never made it past my throat. He didn't bring up Adrian. He didn't bring up the bar. He didn't bring up us. He just said, "Big day tomorrow?" I pretended to understand. Pretended everything was normal. Pretended I still belonged in his world. On Monday morning when I woke up, Troy was already gone. No note. No message. Just an emptiness in the house so heavy it felt like the air had weight. I smoothed the bed sheets with shaking hands, trying to ground myself. Something dreadful was coming. I could feel it. When I reached work, everything felt fine for about 2 minutes. Then I saw Troy standing outside my boss's office. He wasn't arguing. He wasn't pacing. He was just waiting, watching, silent. My stomach twisted violently. Before I could speak to him, a man in a dark jacket walked in holding a manila envelope. He asked my name. I nodded. He handed me the envelope and 2 words fell out of his mouth like a guillotine blade. "You're served." My vision blurred. My knees nearly gave out. My boss rushed over, trying to steady me, asking what happened. But my eyes only found one person. Troy. Still standing there. Still silent. Still watching. His expression is something I will remember for the rest of my life. Not anger. Not hatred. Not even bitterness. Just finality. Like the last ember of our marriage had finally burned itself into cold ash. Then he turned and walked away. No hesitation. No backward glance. Just gone. And in that moment, the truth tore through me. Troy hadn't been healing. He hadn't been working through pain. He hadn't been calming down. He had been planning, strategizing, preparing my consequences while I was busy pretending everything would somehow fix itself. When he walked out of that office, something inside me shattered in a way I didn't know a heart could break. It wasn't the shock of the divorce papers. Not even the humiliation of collapsing into a chair while coworkers stared like I was some tragic scene unfolding in front of them. It was the realization that Troy hadn't abandoned me out of rage. He abandoned me out of disappointment. And somehow, that cut deeper. My boss urged me to go home, to take the week off, gently touching my shoulder like I was something fragile and broken. I muttered something about needing a moment, then locked myself in the bathroom stall and cried until my whole face ached. When I finally looked in the mirror, red eyes, smeared mascara, trembling hands, I whispered the question I had been avoiding. What have I done? Not why did this happen? Not how did it get this far? I knew exactly why. Because I chose this. Because I thought I could juggle 2 worlds without watching one collapse. Because I convinced myself I was smarter than the consequences. Because I mistook Troy's quietness for weakness. He wasn't weak. Not even close. I left work early, hoping, praying, that he'd be home so we could talk, cry, apologize, maybe salvage something. Anything. But the house was empty. And for the first time, I understood what true consequences feel like. The house felt hollow when I walked in, like it had exhaled every trace of warmth and decided not to breathe back in. It was silent, cold, untouched. So I waited, and waited, and waited some more, watching hours crawl by until the sky outside shifted from gold to gray to black. I kept listening for the doorknob, for footsteps, for anything that meant he still considered this place his home. When Troy finally stepped through the door, he didn't seem startled to find me sitting there. He didn't raise his voice or accuse or question. He just looked drained, exhausted in a way that made my chest tighten. I tried to speak before that exhaustion turned into something else. "Troy, can we please talk?" He slipped out of his jacket with deliberate calm, hung it neatly on the hook, and kept his gaze anywhere but on me. "There's nothing left to talk about." His voice didn't shake. Mine did. "Can't we at least try something? Therapy, a break, anything that isn't just throwing everything away?" This time he finally met my eyes, and the warmth I had relied on for years was gone, replaced by something frigid, sharp, and merciless. "You destroyed everything," he said. "I'm just cleaning up the pieces." The words hit me so hard my breath stuttered. But he wasn't finished. "And just so you know, you won't be coming back here." I actually froze. My brain refused to process it. "What? What are you talking about?" "There's a restraining order for the house. You'll get the temporary apartment details from my lawyer." My legs gave out and I sank into the nearest chair because standing felt impossible. "You're kicking me out of my own home?" His stare didn't waver. "No, Emily. You gave up your home the day you chose someone else." The way he said my name, flat, final, stripped of affection, hurt more than anything he could have yelled. And that was the worst part of that night. He never yelled. There was no storm, no fiery confrontation. Just a cold, controlled civility that cut deeper than rage ever could. He spoke to me the way a customer service rep explains a return policy. Detached, polite, uninterested. I begged him. God, I hate remembering that. I begged like someone drowning who suddenly realizes the shore is miles away. I told him I loved him, that I could fix everything, that there was still something worth saving. But my words slid off him like water on stone. His love had died long before that moment. I just never noticed the funeral. The next 2 days unfolded like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. Troy's lawyer delivered everything they'd gathered. Every text, every call log, every screenshot, every tiny breadcrumb I never thought would matter. There were timestamps, photos, names, even audio clips. One of them was me telling Adrian that Troy didn't matter anymore. Hearing my own voice like that made my stomach twist. I didn't recognize the woman speaking. She sounded reckless, careless, cruel. Adrian tried calling after he learned I'd been served, but I let it ring. He left a voicemail promising everything would turn out fine, insisting we'd get through this, but even in his voice I could hear panic he was trying to hide. And soon even that stopped. Because Troy hadn't just gathered evidence for himself, he'd sent it all to Adrian's wife too. I only found out when she messaged me. The text said, "Thank you for helping me see what he really is." But there was no gratitude in her tone, just fury, heartbreak, and the kind of disappointment that burns deeper than anger. After that message, Adrian vanished. No calls. No texts. No excuses. He evaporated the second real consequences appeared. I had ruined my marriage for someone who ran the moment the ground shook beneath him. And then came the kids. I hadn't realized how distant I'd become from them until I saw the confusion and hurt in their eyes. They asked why Daddy cried when he dropped them off. They asked why Mommy wasn't home. They asked why everything felt different. Troy never said a bad word about me, not once. He didn't need to. His silence told them everything. When I hugged them goodbye at Sue's house, my daughter clung to me so tight I could feel her trembling. My son wouldn't even look at me. Both reactions broke me in ways I didn't know a person could break. Later, Troy met me at a coffee shop. He sat across from me with the distance of a lawyer handling a stranger's case. No nostalgia. No softness. No trace of the life we built. He explained the custody plan, the visitation schedule, the finances. He said he was giving me some money to start over, but not a life, not a home, not a marriage. Just a landing pad. Temporary. Bare minimum. A bridge I had to walk alone. When I tried to apologize, to actually say the words he deserved to hear, he simply nodded. Not acceptance, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Then he pushed a manila folder toward me. Before you sign anything, you should know this. Inside were pictures of Adrian with another woman, out together, laughing, holding hands, kissing. Saturday night. The same night I convinced myself he missed me. The same night I sat alone thinking he cared. My face burned with humiliation so intense I could barely breathe. Troy stood. Goodbye, Emily. He didn't wait to see my reaction. He didn't wipe my tears. He didn't offer closure or kindness or anger. He walked out of the cafe and out of my life with the quiet confidence of a man who had already buried the past. Now I'm sitting in a small apartment I never imagined calling home, for quiet walls holding a silence that somehow screams louder than any argument we ever had. I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do with the wreckage I created. I wish I could blame circumstances, misunderstandings, fate, anything. But I can't. This was me. My choices. My destruction. I burned my marriage, my husband's trust, my children's faith in me, even my own dignity and stability, all for what? Tension. Validation. The shallow thrill of someone new wanting me? I don't even know anymore. What hurts the most is realizing Troy didn't destroy my life. He didn't sabotage anything. He didn't seek revenge. He simply stepped aside and stopped shielding me from the consequences I built with my own hands. And I keep hearing the last honest thing he ever said to me. You deserve better. I didn't understand those words back then. But now, I do. Because he deserved better too. And I failed him. If stories like this resonate with you, raw, painful, and brutally real, make sure to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. Your support keeps these powerful confessions alive and helps the truth reach someone who might need to hear it.